playing a bit of Final Fantasy today, and for whatever reason, there's a lot of tanks who seem to, or a lot of DPS who seem to believe that they're tanks.
Don't you love that?
It's hilarious.
It's like, I'll just run up in front, guys. Just back me up. I'm like, what?
Well, the tank is pulling. Like, he has the pull, and then they'll go ahead and grab more stuff. And the tank's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. It has to be methodical, one thing at a time. Don't aggro more than you can chew on. I used some... I shaved this morning, and I got razor burn. And all day I was like, where's my aftershave stuff? The little, like, soothing gel stuff? And I thought I was like, I couldn't find it. Like, I guess I threw it away. And then just before the show, I looked behind a bottle of stuff or whatever on my counter, and it's hiding behind there. It was like lined up with its thinnest side of the bottle towards me, so it was like hiding behind that bottle. And I was like, God dang it! So I put on some, and now, of course, I've got that sort of cologne, baby powder sort of smell all over me. It's a little overwhelming.
I thought that story was going to end somewhere.
No. If there's an ending, the ending is it's Thursday. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lords of the Night. With me, as always, is the Lord of Pennies, Satsu 2 cents.
What up, now?
And I'm your host, Scribe, the Lord of Punishment. Hope you're all doing well today. It is the day before a holiday weekend for those of us in America. If you're lucky enough to have Monday off, congratulations. Yeah, so Satsu, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Just chilling out, enjoying life, or trying to.
That is good. Has your arm fallen off yet?
No, not yet.
Is it going to?
Maybe.
And like a salamander, will you grow it back?
Probably not, but, they're working on that.
Wouldn't that be cool?
I mean, the concept, sure, but I'm sure it wouldn't be nice to look at.
Well, I mean, if we look back to the apocryphal tale of Dr. Kurt Connors and how he was attempting to use lizard DNAs, salamanders, etc., to grow back his lost arm, and we saw how that turned out, didn't we, kids? Right, Satsu? You know how that turned out, right?
He grew another arm, and science was forever changed.
Yes, those two things happened, but he also turned into a human hybrid lizard thing and attacked Spider-Man for decades. But also something that was not to be realized in the Sam Raimi series of movies, even though Dr. Connor shows up at least once or twice, which was kind of a letdown. I was hoping they'd do a lizard thing, but they saved that for the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, and it was a bunch of really bad CGI. It even looked like the lizard. He looked like... they just took like a human face, a bald guy, and just made it look green and scaly. Instead of actually making him look like a lizard, give him a lizard head like in the comic books. I don't know why they do that. If you're going to make a CGI monster, you might as well go out for something even crazier than making it try to look realistic. Anyway. As for myself, I had a really, really, really busy day. I had to do the second half of all the month-end billing stuff. And I had to get ready for the TEDx, and I had to have my every 6-month video phone call with my psychologist to verify that I'm still alive and not insane and can still get my prescription refilled. And I had to come up with a theme for tonight's show, which I hadn't thought about until just before lunchtime. And I was like, and I remember you mentioned Dave Chappelle the other night or something, and I was like, oh, Half-Baked. How about Half-Baked? And also because, Clarence Williams III passed away not too long ago. And who else is Clarence Williams III, Satsu?
The Crypt. Well, I was about to say the Crypt Keeper. That's
close enough. Yeah, he's the was he the Undertaker or the Mortuary or whatever. Anyway, He's like, yes, the shit. You will get the shit. And he was also Samson in Half Baked. So there you go. Let's see in the chat just a second ago, a couple seconds ago. Thank you, tall person. Happy National Ice Cream Month. National.
National. You heard the man.
You know, you say that enough times, it kind of loses all meaning. National. Almost like Arnold Palmer. Anyway, Monkey Dick Jim Jones, movies, video games. Hit that like button if you have not already, and so many of you haven't. So whatever, you know, it's fine. Likes are all that drive videos these days. I hear, sort of, kind of. Yeah. And please share our stuff. Share it far, wide, and sideways. Usually I say, you know, at the end of this, something very sort of magnanimous and, you know, for the good of the community and other content creators. I'm going to be slightly selfish. I am about 80 subscribers away from 5,000. I've never really set a subscriber goal or anything. I always thought that was kind of like, I mean, like I don't look at my channel that way, but I think it would be nice if I got to 5,000 before my 5th anniversary. Somehow, some way. I think it'd be nice. You know, I don't ask for much. I saw a channel that I just started watching a little while ago. Again, a channel that started out just a few weeks ago with maybe a couple of thousand subscribers. And he just hit 10,000 subscribers. But of course, his content is crazy popular, true crime stuff and all that kind of thing. And I was just like, gosh, good for him. And I look at me like, can I just get 5,000? I know it doesn't mean much, doesn't change anything, but it's, I don't know. If I have a little bit of ego about this, I guess that might be it. I clicked on the wrong thing because chat moved. Either way, Pirates Creed says, evening to Ebony Williams. And hi, Ebony Williams. But, Officer Buck, thank you so much for the hey you classy pair. Turning around and showing its badonkadonk at me. Well, you know, whatever works for you, I guess. Anyway, Satsu, anything else before we get into the schniz?
Not really.
Okay, well, now there is something to talk about, because why did you just pull a Bela Lugosi on me?
I don't know.
Or was that meant to be Russian?
Whatever.
But you, what? What do you mean, whatever? You did it. I have to ask now.
You don't have to ask.
Well, why else would you do it? You know, slightly related, I got a call from my sister today.
Yeah.
And, okay, no, really, it is related after a fashion.
Okay.
Just give me a second. So I got a call from my sister today, and we have a plan to hang out on Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
I've been, since before the pandemic, I've been meaning to take her out to breakfast to celebrate. She got a promotion like last year, like just before the pandemic hit, right? Or before the lockdown and everything. And I was like, hey, I'm going to take you out to a big breakfast to celebrate. And then the lockdown happened, and the restaurant that we always go to for breakfast has not been open and available for a year. And so we've been meaning to do this breakfast thing for quite a while, and now finally we can. And so anyway, she called up, and I thought she was going to talk to me about the plans for Saturday, but she's like, hey, can you do a Cookie Monster voice? I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, I got a friend who's doing a thing, and he wants to put like a Cookie Monster thing in it, and I don't know, can you do a Cookie Monster voice? Because she knows I do voices and things. And I was like, I can't say I've ever tried, and I'd be my own worst witness because, you know, when you hear your own voice, it's different than when somebody else hears it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, C is for cookie, it's good enough for me.
I mean,
and I don't know, was that any good? You guys have to tell me.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty accurate.
Because I don't know. Like Kermit the Frog, everybody's like, you know, it's not easy being green. But Cookie Monster, I don't have any practice with. So I'll leave it up to the audience. Let's move on to the wonderful world of the news, because God knows this is getting boring. So how about we start off with some racial tension, Satsu?
Oh, man. There's no tension I love more than the racial variety.
There's no tension like racial tension. And Felicia Rashad's support of Bill Cosby highlights division in the black community. Yes, if you don't know who Felicia Rashad is, she's the actress who played Bill Cosby's wife in The Cosby Show, Mrs. Huxtable. And she is celebrating the release of her former co-star and, I assume, friend, much to the consternation of supporters of survivors, is what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Depending on you and your life experiences, Bill Cosby is either an abuser or the latest black man to fall prey to being unjustly accused. In the case of the 83-year-old actor, it is actually dozens of women, the majority of them white, over several years who alleged sexual misconduct by Cosby dating back decades. Cosby has consistently denied the allegations. Which is why, when his longtime friend and co-star Phylicia Rashad celebrated the overturning of the verdict against Cosby on Wednesday, it set off a debate involving race, misogyny, and the Me Too movement. Mashisu, did you forget Monkey Dick? No, I said Monkey Dick, Jim Jones, movies, video games, hit that like button if you haven't already, and share our stuff. And then I went on to a little recitation of subscribe to my channel. Did you miss that? I mean, admittedly, I did go off in several other directions after that, so you might have gotten lost in the chaff, as it were. Thank you. This is Kyle. Hello, chat people in Latin. Hello, Kyle. Let's see. Well before Cosby was convicted and sentenced in 2018 to 3 to 10 years in state prison for... Why did you put 3 as a word and 10 in numbers? Pick one. It's either word, or, I mean, generally speaking, when you're talking about, in this context, it would have been the number 3. But whatever. State prison for drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constand at his home in 2004. There was much debate over his guilt and innocence. Yeah, that's what happens at a trial. Yeah. But nowhere more than in the black community, where Cosby had meant so much as both an entertainer and an advocate for education. Yada, 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 yada. We know. Okay. Hashtag Bye Felicia, a reference to the catchphrase Bye Felicia, made popular by the hit 1995 film Friday, began trending, and another famous TV mom even weighed in. Oh my gosh. Felicia, what are you thinking? Actress Janet Hubert, who played the original Aunt Viv on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, tweeted, I don't know you, but to say this was terribly wrong. It was complicated by the fact that Rashad is the newly appointed dean of the reestablished College of Fine Arts at her alma mater, Howard University in Washington, D.C. Why is that complicated? Is someone not allowed to have an opinion, even if it's the one that is unpopular, about their friend? So how does that complicate the situation? I love Phylicia Rashad, but Howard need to remove her, cause how safe would you feel if your dean is defending a man who admitted he drugged and raped women? Did you attend college? Let's see. But not everyone disagreed with Rashad's support for Cosby. When Howard University posted a statement on their verified Instagram account, there are 2 C's in account, just so you know, CNN, but God knows you always don't actually check your own copy. Disavowing Rashad's original tweet, writing that it, quote, lacked sensitivity towards survivors of sexual assault. Several people defended Rashad. Quote, she spoke truth, one person commented. Go ahead.
Here's the thing about that. I always hate when I hear statements like, it lacks sensitivity towards survivors. Well, if the person is accused and allegedly or whatever, it turns out that they didn't do anything, then it ain't got nothing to do with survivors. The fact that an innocent person got accused of something and was proven to be innocent, that doesn't affect survivors at all. You don't have to delicately come out and be like, okay, well, I'm glad that this person, the charges were dropped. It's like, well, what about the people who got raped? What the fuck do they have to do with this? They have nothing to do with this. Like, I mean, and once again, this is a unique situation. Bill Cosby's situation is a little unique in that regard, but still, it's like, why even bring them up?
Let's see. Dean Rashad has done nothing wrong, another defender wrote. It's indicative of the division that has existed since allegations against Cosby first went mainstream in 2014, when a video of comedian Hannibal Buress talking about Cosby went viral. Yeah, this all started because of a comedy skit. I'm not even kidding. This whole thing started and got traction because of a comedy skit. From the onset, there was utter disbelief within the black community that a man of Cosby's stature could have done anything so heinous. Wait a second. Okay. What does stature have to do with purity of action? Was there really that much? I mean, now Cosby as an individual and the image that he propagated over his career in comparison to the allegations against him, yeah, that is kind of hard to make work in your head, right?
Right.
You know, America's Dad, Family Man, some of the most like clean comedy you could see for the most part, and still really good on stage. That's the problem. Is it really the fact that he was of a high stature, did something terrible? Is that really that uncommon in quote unquote the black community or any community? I mean, anyway.
It's just one of those throwaway things that people say to add unnecessary fucking bullshit to whatever the fuck it is they're trying to convey.
Yeah. Misinformation was rampant. It was said that Cosby was targeted because he was in the process of buying NBC, when in reality he had explored such a sale in 1992.
Oh, that was the first thing that came out. I remember that. Yeah.
I don't think I ever heard that. But
really?
No,
yeah.
I don't think I ever heard that.
That was huge, especially because they were talking about yet another black man is being targeted as soon as he's getting ready to make another he was getting ready to get too much power. He overstepped his bounds, so they were trying to take him down. I was like, yeah.
If I heard that, I have obviously forgotten it. But yeah, no, that I was like, what? There was also discussion about misogyny after Barbara Bowman, one of Cosby's accusers, penned an opinion piece for the Washington Post in which she noted, quote, only after a man called Bill Cosby a rapist in a comedy act did the public outcry begin in earnest. Okay, now I don't know the history of all this other stuff, but how many of his accusers went to the police, spoke up, or did otherwise before Hannibal Buress said anything? Because I seem to recall that after this became a thing, all of a sudden, all the accusers came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm not being like sarcastic and condescending. I don't know, but I have a feeling that if 60 women all came out talking about Cosby doing the exact same thing before the comedy act, we would have heard about it in earnest before then. But then again, I don't know the exact history of everything that happened here. Anyway, the short version is Felicia Rashad showing support for her friend, whatever you think about the accusations against him, is not then an insult to anybody who is a quote-unquote survivor of rape.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with that, actually.
Nothing to do with it at all. If you're doing that to yourself, and her job should not be in any way, shape, or form threatened by speaking her opinion about a personal friend, even if you don't like her personal friend. I don't know what to tell you. Now, I don't know the truth behind what Cosby did or did not do. That is all. I'm so separated from that. It nothing to do with anything. But this particular incident is a people just making a whole lot of hay out of nothing.
That's fucking usual.
Anyway, moving on to other celebrity legal entanglements. This was the big news of the day. Prosecutors charged Trump Organization with a 15-year tax scheme.
All right.
Now, I want to make one thing clear. They charge the Trump Organization. Okay. Now, I not being a legal expert, I don't know if that actually means that Trump himself is under any legal peril, but let's find out. New York prosecutors on Thursday charged the Trump Organization and its chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, with a 15-year alleged tax scheme that marked the first criminal case against the former president's namesake company. I've seen a lot of people saying, Trump's going to jail now or things like that. And I would keep looking like, has Trump been charged with something?
Dude, they are very, very specifically and meticulously trying not to specifically say that. So it's just like, I don't think they'd be that careful about their words. If it was Trump, then they'd be like, Trump is in trouble. But
yeah, that's the thing. An indictment unsealed Thursday by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office charged the company and an entity called Trump Payroll Corporation with 10 counts and Weisselberg with 15 felony counts in connection with an alleged scheme stretching back to 2005, quote, to compensate Weisselberg and other Trump Organization executives in a manner that was off the books, unquote. Who are these other executives, and do any of them have the last name of Trump? They were charged with a scheme to defraud, conspiracy, criminal tax fraud and falsifying business records. Weisselberg was also charged with grand larceny and offering a false instrument for filing. Well, so far, it sounds like this guy stole from Trump. But let's see. Prosecutors said Thursday their investigation is ongoing. The probe has delved into whether the Trump organization misled lenders, insurers, and tax authorities about the value of certain properties, the treatment of tax deductions, as well as hush money payments to silence an alleged affair with Trump. Oh, we're coming back to that? Wait, is this the Stormy Daniels thing, or is this the what's her name? There's another one. I forget her name. Or maybe there's more. I don't know. Thursday's indictment, which focused largely on Weisselberg, described an array of luxury perks he received from the company, allegedly in lieu of compensation, including an Upper West Side apartment, a pair of Mercedes-Benz cars for him and his wife, and private school tuition for 2 family members whom CNN has reported are his grandchildren. So wait, described an array of luxury perks he received from the company, allegedly in lieu of... So rather than being paid $5 million a year, he was given an apartment and a car and everything. So he was compensated for his work with really expensive stuff?
I think the issue that they tried to point out before is that it wasn't on the books. It was just like it's something that probably should have been documented in a more official and government tracked way. But
okay, well, if that's the case, but just like, I mean, if you're being paid in barter, I don't know if that's necessarily illegal. It might be weird. All told, the indictment alleged Weisselberg evaded taxes on $1.76 million in income over a period beginning in 2005 and concealed for years that he was a resident of New York City, thereby avoiding paying city income taxes. Well, it sounds like this guy committed a lot of crimes. Prosecutors alleged he evaded a total of more than $900,000 in federal, state, and city taxes during this period and received a total of $133,124 in state tax refunds, quote, to which he was not entitled. Quote, the scheme was intended to allow certain employees to substantially understate their compensation from the Trump organization so that they could and did pay federal, state, and local taxes in amounts that were significantly less than the amounts they should have paid or should have been paid. The indictment said.
Yeah.
Okay. After entering a courtroom in New York Supreme Court Thursday afternoon in handcuffs, Weisselberg pleaded not guilty, and Justice Juan Merchan released him on his own recognizance, ordering him to return in his passport. Former President Donald Trump himself was not charged. Again, I saw all this stuff on Twitter and elsewhere today going like, oh, they're finally going to throw him behind bars. And I'm like, every headline I'm reading is Trump organization, Trump CFO. Like, I mean, okay, if the investigation's, if Trump was aware of this, okay. Maybe this is all part of, they'll have somebody flip or something or turn over documents or whatever. Following the unsealing of the indictment, he blasted the charges in a statement. That sounds gross. Criticizing the investigation as led by 2 Democrats, Cyrus Vance Jr., the Manhattan District Attorney, and Letitia James, the New York State Attorney General. Either they have the evidence or they don't. That's why they're going to court. Quote, the political witch hunt by the radical left Democrats with New York now taking over the assignment continues. It is dividing our country like never before, Trump said.
Yeah.
Or they discovered massive tax fraud taking place under your nose. This is the downside either way if you're Trump. If it's true, if what happened is true, and you didn't know, well, then who knows what else is going on in your other endeavors that you never paid attention to. And if it's true and you did know, well, you're in deep trouble. Now, the first possibility is more of a PR/investor problem at that point. But, you're not going to go to jail. The other one is obviously more criminally advanced. But either way, yeah. Now, the only way that this turns out well for Trump in the overall is if it's shown they have no case, which we won't know until after the trial. But anyway. In statements, the Trump organization also characterized the prosecution as a political act and said Weisselberg was being used as a, quote, pawn in a scorched earth attempt to harm the former president, unquote. Yeah. Given the madness of the previous 4 years, here's the thing. I don't necessarily disbelieve the possibility that this is all manufactured, but we'll just have to wait and see,
Well, is that even I feel like at this point, it's not even really a valid statement anymore. This is a political act. It's like, what the fuck is it nowadays? Is there anything that politicians do that's not inherently political?
Well, but here's the thing. In this instance, given the fervor over which everybody had and still have for Trump and anything dealing with Trump, like I say, and given what happened with the impeachments and with the Russiagate and with 2 scoops of ice cream, it's impossible for me not to have at least a shred of doubt that the motivation here and the charges and everything are based on reality and not partisan politics. So, but again, this is all going to come out as things proceed, and either they have a case or they don't. So, let's see. Who's Red Dirt Runner says Scribe Like Monkey did an after party on this. It looks like incompetence, or he cheated both Trump and the government. The government looks like they are fishing. Well, I mean, looking for somebody to roll is not a invalid strategy if you're trying to take down a bigger fish. That's just common practice. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Of course, the $1 million question is, or the $1.73 million question is there anything to find? Is there a there? And, if this reveals that this guy was using his position in the Trump organization to commit massive tax fraud and okay, throw him away. I got no problem with that. If they're fishing for something more on Trump himself, okay. If they find something, well, good, because I don't particularly enjoy criminals. If they waste their time and the taxpayers' money going after a wild goose chase, well, they're going to have to answer for that too. But like I say, I guess we will see. Moving on briefly to the other big story of the day that I saw lots of people talking about, which I don't know all the details of. Major 6-3 rulings foreshadow a sharper Supreme Court right turn. Remember, just after the Supreme Court ruled in favor, or at least not in favor, well, how should I put this? They ruled not to strike down the Affordable Care Act. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, the argument there is that, well, the case brought to them wasn't strong enough to do so. All the same, it's not like they took the opportunity to cheat the system and do it anyway. So what happened here? All term long, the Supreme Court has been the target of political players as members of Congress called for a legislative solution. The Biden administration launched a commission to study court reform, and progressive groups claimed that court packing measures were necessary to save the Supreme Court. Save the Supreme Court from having people on it that you just don't like politically. Which is obviously always a completely reasonable motivation to try to upset the balance of our checks and balances. Make sure you get the outcome you want.
Of course.
Meanwhile, conservatives relish the opportunity of a swift right turn with their new 6-3 majority after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died last September and Amy Coney Barrett joined the bench the next month. By the last day of the term, the justices finally issued their own verdict. But what about all the other verdicts they've done to this point? Okay. They handed out a pair of decisions with deep political undertones. They are deciding constitutionality in law. Everything they do has deep political undertones. It goes to the heart, for God's sakes. That will bolster the narratives put forward by the polls of both parties. Wait, so it's a push? Okay, the justices also foreshadowed fissures that will likely widen next year as the court hears blockbuster cases with broad social implications concerning abortion, the Second Amendment, and possibly affirmative action. So basically, a standard year for the Supreme Court. I don't think a year or two goes by without the Supreme Court having a case regarding abortion or the Second Amendment or affirmative action or health care or, police activity, whatever. It's just kind of par for the course. But then I guess everything old is forgotten and is now new again or something. I don't know. Which isn't to say that the term wasn't entirely made up of 6-3 opinions on ideological lines. Wait a second. By the last day of the term, the justices finally issued their own verdict. Their own verdict on what? Conservatives relish the possibility of a swift turn with their new 6-3 majority, right? So their own verdict is they're not going to do what anybody wants. Two of the most important cases of the term were 7-2 and 9-0, and there were 29 unanimous opinions. But Republicans and conservatives are finally getting the decisions they pined for as former President Donald Trump changed the face of the courts and liberals are preparing for a bloodbath. They are? Because the Affordable Care Act is still in action. How are Republicans getting the decisions they pined for? This is one of the most confusing articles I've read today, and I've only done 3 so far.
It's almost like all the fear mongering and shit that they did beforehand to let us know. Apparently, whoever wrote this article, they didn't get the email that it didn't happen.
Man, I've watched this. So when Samuel Alito was put on the bench, everybody was free. Everybody's free. Oh my God, abortion's over, right? Okay. I mean, hell, when John Roberts was put on the bench, abortion's over. When Kavanaugh's put on the bench, abortion's over. And I'm still sitting here going like, what? It almost never pans out the way that they say it will, or that the fearmongers say it will. That's not to say it couldn't, but I've yet to see evidence of that.
But it's weird though, because like you would think like, okay, well, it didn't pan out, so we'll just kind of let it go and pretend like we never said it. They're like, no, just proceed as normal. It doesn't matter if it didn't happen. Just act like it did. People aren't really paying attention. So just talk like it all happened. Because this person, if you read this article from that perspective, this person is talking like everything they said happened. No, there's no more gay marriage. There's no more abortions. All that shit's gone now, according to this person.
The court's new majority was in full force on Thursday as it limited the ability for minorities to challenge state laws they believe are discriminatory under the Historic Voting Rights Act in a case involving 2 Arizona laws that a lower court said had a disparate impact on minorities in the state. Really? The Supreme Court said if you're not white, you don't get to challenge the law? I'd love to see that quote. Justice Samuel Alito, echoing comments from Trump and Republican-led states claiming election fraud from last year's presidential election, reversed and stressed for a 6-3 court what he called a state's, quote, entirely legitimate interest, unquote, in the prevention of fraud. Okay. He said that the Arizona laws were akin to the, quote, usual burdens of voting, unquote, and added that while the Voting Rights Act, quote, exemplifies our country's commitment to democracy, the law does, quote, not deprive the states of their authority to establish non-discriminatory voting rules. Okay, you're doing a poor job of telling me about what the problem is here. His opinion drew a fierce dissent from Justice Elena Kagan, who said the majority had, quote, no right to remake, unquote, the law, and that it, quote, should not be diminished by this court. What is the law? Okay. I kind of had the same kind of argument earlier today on my TEDx. If you're going to tell me that there is a problem, you need to articulate the problem. And so if you're going to say that the decision of the Supreme Court has fundamentally wounded the laws protecting minorities, you need to tell me what are the laws protecting minorities that they have wounded.
No, they don't.
Okay, Thomas A. Sayans, president of the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, said in a statement that the court's, quote, majority is woefully disconnected from social and historical reality, particularly when it comes to the experiences of racial minorities who continue to face daily depredations of basic rights in our country, unquote. President Joe Biden, the Justice Department, and liberal groups also criticized the ruling. What? Do they ever explain what?
Here's the thing. If they explain to you what they were talking about, then there's a chance you can go look up the law, do a one-to-one comparison, and see if they're telling the truth or not. But if you're a mindless drone that just reads whatever tells you things you want to hear, you're not going to go look it up or investigate it. You're just going to believe that something is being blocked, and you're just going to leave it at that.
I'm scrolling down on the off chance that they bury it somewhere in here. No. Okay. Maybe it is in here. All right. So I have a request for our crack team of journalistic investigators in the chat. I am looking for just a bare bones. Here's the law that was in contention at the court, and here's how their decision affects it. Because CNN, especially their Ariane DeVogue, CNN's Supreme Court reporter, can't seem to get the basics down of just describing what was at stake and what did the court decide in the first 3 paragraphs, which if you're a Supreme Court reporter, you should be able to summarize those things pretty quick. But instead, we go into this soliloquy talking about, the possibilities of what the court might have had happen with the people that don't. Okay. Anyway, we're going to move on here. But thank you. This is Kyle. If they explain it, then it's no longer emotional manipulation like they want it to be. Well, yes. That's what I'm trying to get past, is just all this rhetoric of like, the fears of this, and they were going to do this, and da-da-da-da-da. Just tell me what happened. Can you just tell me what happened? In that vein, I want to do another sort of channel promotion of somebody else real quick. There's a video game commentator, speedrun expert guy. He's got his own channel. His name's Carl Jobst, Karljobst. I think it's just called Carl Jobst Gaming on YouTube. Anyway, he does all these like mini documentaries on specific games and the speed running community around those games and the controversies in speed running, like how is this done? Is it legal? Did this person cheat? So I know zip about Minecraft, right? All I know about Minecraft really comes from watching his videos where he's covering the speed gaming community, because I still find that stuff interesting even if I don't play the game. Well, there was this huge controversy recently over a guy, a gamer, his name is Dream, and I guess he's just like a pro Minecraft player. Controversy over accusations that he cheated in getting a world record.
Oh, yeah. I went down that rabbit hole. That was interesting.
Well, here's the thing. Carl Jobst. Okay, so I know very little about all this that went on, but Carl Jobst put out an hour and a 15-minute documentary basically yesterday or the day before. And if you want to see, setting aside, if you know nothing about Minecraft or anything else, okay, which is fine because I don't, but if you want to see what actual investigative journalism looks like, if you want to see somebody that actually goes to the effort to examine all the angles of something and keep his personal opinions separate from the facts at hand, and when he does give an assessment of his opinion, he makes sure he tells you that this is just his opinion. Watch that. I mean, like I said, if you know nothing about Minecraft, just listening to his breakdown of everything, it'll put you in a good stead with what the story is and what the situation is, even if you don't understand the specifics of everything. But the way he approached it, I was like, if only actual journalists would go to the mat on things that are, really important in the world. And I'm not, and for those of you that are Minecraft things, I'm not saying that Minecraft isn't important. If it's important to you, that's great. That's fine. But his process, his meticulous examination of all the facts, the allegations, and what's behind them. I mean, he put the lie to so many people on the internet who made claims about what the truth was, and he showed how they were wrong, but how they were wrong about the wrong things and that kind of. Anyway, just to promote Carl Jobst, Karljobst. He does great documentaries on Doom speed runs and histories of things, and it's a great channel. Anyway, we're going to move on from that to the wonderful world of MSS News. So, guys, if you have news stories you'd like us to read on the air, please send them to us via Twitter using the hashtag MSS News. Can't promise we'll get to them all, but that's because I'm long-winded and have a tendency to stray from the topic at hand. If you hadn't noticed.
I noticed.
I'm pretty sure you did. You've been here longer.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, we talked about this. Didn't we talk about this yesterday? The BET founder? Somebody's brought that up. I don't think I read a story on it.
Yeah, refresh. Oh, is it the black millionaire who wants the reparations or something?
Yeah. This is
okay. It was mentioned. We didn't talk about it though.
Yeah, Frosted Glass sends us this one. America's first black billionaire wants his reparations check now. The founder of BET is pushing a $14 trillion reparations proposal he says would provide enough to close the giant black-white wealth gap. Okay. Robert L. Johnson, the founder of Black Entertainment Television, America's first black billionaire, wants a check. He wants it from the government and he wants it to come with an apology for slavery, Jim Crow, and hundreds of years of racism. The 75-year-old media magnate owns several homes, heads an asset management firm, and was the first black person to own a majority stake in an NBA team. He doubts that check will ever come, but he sees a new kind of reparations being called by a different name so as to not be divisive or controversial happening already. The new reparations is critical race theory education.
Oh, boy.
It's the housing grant program in Evanston, Illinois. It's the $5 billion of targeted support and debt relief for black farmers, which they've already kind of ruled is probably unconstitutional, if you can believe it. And it's the $50 billion in corporate pledges in the wake of George Floyd's murder dedicated to combating systemic racism and inequality.
And guess what? Yeah. None of that, if you ask any activist who's pushing for any of it, none of that is enough to actually solve the problem or to make bygones be bygones as far as racism is in America. So
now here's the thing. And if you want an example of what I'm talking about on a micro scale for what that's going to be, that last one there, $50 billion in corporate pledges in the wake of George Floyd's murder dedicated to combating systemic racism. What that is going to primarily involve is going to be hiring people in companies to act as diversity and inclusion officers, or consultants for companies to go in and do diversity training, or a whole bunch of peripheral stuff that is basically just shaming people into behaving a particular way or making it corporately illegal to do anything against anybody who isn't white, and also promote the idea of hiring on the basis of race. If you don't believe me, there's a video I did. It's a curriculum of fear, I think, from a while back, where the chancellor of the New York City School District spent something like $70 million or something of funding to hire two people, technically two firms, but to hire two people to address systemic racism in the school district. And I found videos, presentations by these two people about what they think about the world and how they operate. And I showed that they just threw all that money down the drain to a couple of organizations that all they do is just promote more racism. That's it, if you can believe it. So if there is $50 billion floating out there getting ready to go to address systemic racism, it's going to be going to increase systemic racism or create systemic racism where it didn't exist before in order to combat systemic racism. But anyway. Quote, that's what's happening to the reparations. It's been cut up into small pieces of things that look and feel like we want to end systemic racism. We want to end police brutality and shootings and to provide financing to black small business owners, Johnson tells Vice News. Well, see, ending police brutality doesn't actually involve paying out more money. It means defunding the police, right? That's what I was told for last year.
Also, they're not looking to end police brutality. They're looking to end police brutality against black people. If police brutality still continued and they somehow managed to get rid of it completely to where it never happened to another black person, if it still happened to white people, they'd be perfectly fine with that. So,
quote, and then people can say, well, we really don't need reparations because when you put all of these things together, it's reparations. It's just not one big bill or asking this country to stand up and apologize. And if you're not asking people to pay, and you're not asking people to pay out their paychecks. But that's
not how that works.
But that's the problem, Johnson says. He calls the current approach, quote, placebo paternalism.
Oh my God.
Quote, reparations has two components. The first was atonement, and the other was monetary, he adds. Had two components. Quote, with no doubt whatsoever, it was supposed to come from the government representing the people of the country. It was reimbursement or recompense, if you will, for the harm. Okay, now on a less facetious note, this is the question I have asked every time that they've had, and I've been able to cover one of those committee hearings in the government on reparations, because this happened just last year. They had one of these committee hearings where they had a whole bunch of guests on, and they had a couple of politicians talking about reparations, and they had people from both sides of the argument about for or against reparations. And the entire time, I'm just wondering, okay, well, what would you do and how would you do it? Mm-hmm. And every single time that the people on the for reparations side were either in the course of their own presentations or questions from the politicians. Almost to a one, they all said it's not about writing a check.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is, I mean, I don't, even the people who are for the reparations idea, if you're at all being intellectually honest, have to confess that there is no rational way to decide or to figure out or to piece out how you pay out money and how much and to whom at this point in history to quote unquote repair the damage. I mean, if there was an unlimited amount of money and you had every way to know exactly who was a descendant of somebody who happened to have been a slave at some point, and you could then somehow assess how bad did they have it as a slave compared to this other slave, etc., all that kind of stuff. It's also impossible. And I'm saying impossible just because I can't think of a better word. It's literally impossible to make up a system that would quote unquote fairly compensate everyone who is a descendant of a slave. So they can't say just write a check, because if they do that, it's going to hit a brick wall, because you're never going to find a system that works. So they say things like what our speaker is saying here. It's about, instituting programs or setting up specific things that are geared towards helping a particular demographic and that kind of stuff. So our billionaire here is just ignoring reality first and foremost.
Well, not only that, they've backed themselves into a corner with the rhetoric that they've already pushed out, because according to, especially the way that they operate or whatever, they don't want you to, like, when it comes to monetary things, first off, they haven't even decided who would all be eligible, to get this money. So they haven't figured that much out yet anyway. But if they do decide on a figure, like, let's just say they decide on an X amount of money, we need this amount of money and it'll solve the problem, whatever. The way that they've built their organizations and shit, they would immediately become useless afterwards. All the power that they wield in their positions now would become absolutely worthless the moment that check hits, because they're like, we don't have to listen to you anymore. The only reason you exist right now is because of those perceived issues. We've paid you off now. You're worthless.
Yeah, and one of the problems here, and it's nobody's fault per se, but one of the problems is the amount of time that has passed since the things that they are saying should be repaired with reparations have gone by. Right. And they keep putting a whole bunch of things together that were separated by time, but are connected by theme. For example, slavery is not the same as Jim Crow, but they're both legal statuses that were based on discrimination by race. And so they put these things together when you have generations separating these events from taking place. Now, the first comparable thing I can think of in recent history was the Japanese internment camps during World War II. But the situation there was, you knew exactly who were the victims of that program, right? Because there was a record. It was this person was here for this, and there was meticulous records kept of who was imprisoned and for why and all that kind of thing. So you could conceivably take every individual directly affected by that situation and make some sort of apology, monetary or otherwise. In this instance, so much time has passed, there's no conceivable way of doing that. So what we're going to end up seeing is what we're seeing right now with the debt forgiveness program that they're attempting to institute for minority farmers, or specifically black farmers. Because the problem there is the laws have changed since slavery to where you can't set aside federal funding to people on the basis of race. It just doesn't clock. You have to set it up by something that's far more vague than that. Like something that doesn't have to do with race or religion or something else. Because if you're going to say, well, we're going to give money to this demographic of a religion because we feel bad about XYZ PDQ. You come into an issue there. It's like, well, we're not supposed to be favoring a religion. We're not supposed to be favoring a state race or something else like that. So I don't know how they get around the reality of the amount of time that's passed. Is there a case for reparations to be made? Possibly. But every time that I hear about it, it never makes any sense as to, okay, you don't need to tell me that racist things happened in this country legally in the past. Really, I mean, it's not because I'm dismissing them, it's because I know. Everybody knows. You have to start telling us, what do you intend to do about it, and how do you intend to go about doing it? And every time that question comes up, we get into very vague territory.
Well, I always think of the meme because, and it's kind of the opposite of the meme too, where it's that Dave Chappelle is like, modern problems require modern solutions, but they're like, no, modern problems require ancient solutions. So we need to actually revert back to all of the racist policies and bullshit that enabled white people to do things to black people that's bad. We need to reinstate a lot of that shit so that way we can do that now to fix the wrongs from back then.
Right.
Like,
I mean, that really is the only way to do it in the way that the rhetoric would match with.
Yeah, it's the only way that actually makes sense. Yeah. Because our laws, like you said, time has changed quite a bit since then. So,
yeah. And again, tracking who has been harmed by XYZ, it just, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to, because this is just, the soup du jour, more racial stuff. This comes from Sean Uli. North Korea defector criticizes Gwen Berry, calls her spoiled. I think we kind of got that. There was an interview with her the other day where she was trying to justify her actions, even though she said she didn't hate the country or whatever, but specifically about the national anthem. So the national anthem, for those of you that don't know, is, at least the one that you sing at the sports games, is taken in part from a much longer poem by Francis Scott Key called the Star-Spangled Banner.
Right.
There is a third verse in that entire poem that mentions the blood of slaves and I forget what the other word is, but it's like servitude or something like that. Now, if you read the poem in context, you would see that verse is not a celebration of the blood of slaves. It is a lament of their deaths. It says they have no refuge. The author is complaining that in the battle, not even the slaves had refuge against the blood of, the oncoming battle and everything. But for some reason, I can't imagine why, Gwen Berry and several other people I've seen in the past have brought up the fact that slaves are mentioned and blood in the same sentence. Therefore, the national anthem, or the poem it's based on, is celebrating the death of slaves. When if you actually read it in context, that is not what is being said. So I heard that the other day. She was complaining about that. I'm like, you really should read the poem sometime to know what you're talking about.
Well, if there's one thing a modern activist hates more than anything, that's context.
Let's see. A human rights activist who escaped oppression in North Korea called U.S. Olympian Gwen Berry spoiled for turning her back on the American flag, saying she doesn't know how good she has it. Yunomi Park, who defected from the Hermit Kingdom in 2007, told Fox and Friends Thursday that Berry's decision to snub the Stars and Stripes as the national anthem played is, quote, unthinkable. Well, okay, it's not unthinkable. Before, certainly, but definitely after Colin Kaepernick decided to sit out the national anthem because he was protesting racial disparity, not that he was throwing a tantrum over a contract dispute. It's not unthinkable.
It's one of those things that's like, and people won't like when you say stuff like this, but it's oddly American, because people, it's so un-American. It's like, not really, because the beauty about America is this is one of the places you can do that.
Yeah. Now, like I say, I disagree with Gwen Berry and what she did. Mm-hmm. I think given her position, where she was at, the context of the sport and everything else, I would think that should disqualify her, or at least qualify her for some kind of censure. But I do not argue with her right to do so. Mm-hmm. I think it conflicts entirely with the spirit of where she was, what she was doing, and what her efforts were supposed to have represented. But she can do that. But like so many other people say, it's like, well, you have every right to say that or do that or make that statement, just like I have every right to criticize you for having done it. Mm-hmm. In North Korea, people who are actually oppressed don't even know they're oppressed, Park told the outlet. Yeah. Have you ever seen one of those documentaries from inside Korea or North Korea? It is. Okay. Oh, it's creepy because the few times they've allowed like journalists and things to go in and like, let's film what's going on in Korea. Well, they put like the journalists in this bus and they drive them down this very eerily empty road where there are walls and trees on either side, so you can't see anything outside of the road. And they take you to this picturesque town that looks like it was transplanted from 1950s America with stores and people walking around and all smiling and everybody's happy and there's like food in the windows and everybody's there and everything. It is so manufactured and creepy. And then you see the people like gathering together to weep over the picture of the great leader, the now dead Kim Jong-il from years ago, and even his father, who is also revered as a god practically. And they're just ecstatically crying and weeping over his loss and everything else. And you look at it and go like, are they doing that so they don't get shot? Or do they actually believe it? And either way, neither option is good. You know? It's so bad. Quote, if she were North Korea, not only herself will be executed, also 8 generations of her family can be sent to political prison camps and execution, Park writes. Yeah, we were talking about this the other night. If you think America is such a terrible place to be, seriously, take some time and travel the world to the kind of places that run under the governmental system that you think is so much better. By all means. I mean, go to Cuba, go to North Korea, go to China, spend a month living there on your own, or just touring the place if they allow it, and see what you think. If that is a place and that is a system and a situation that is markedly better than what America is. And this is not me saying America is perfect, but I'll tell you what, as compared to a lot of places on the planet, you got it pretty good here. You know?
Yeah.
Let's see. Meanwhile, Barry, an outspoken activist for black rights, insisted that her protest during Olympic trials over the weekend doesn't mean she hates the U.S. The athlete said she just had an issue with the national anthem itself because of a reference it makes to slavery and the composer's ties to the trade.
I don't know, because she's had some time from the first initial kind of outrage behind it to kind of formulate something. And I swear to God, I just get the feeling that she literally just learned about that verse yesterday. like she just found out about it. Well, I need an excuse, guys. Somebody give me something.
Quote, if you know your history, you know the full song of the national anthem. Actually, it's not the full song. It's just the poem the song's based on. The third paragraph, third verse, you mean, speaks to slaves in America, our blood being slain all over the floor. Yeah, because the author was commenting on the fact that during the battle, refuge for even the slave and the hireling could not be found. He was lamenting their deaths, that not even in that time, in that point in history, not even those who had nothing to do with it, or even those who had been press ganged into fighting for the British, could find refuge. He was not celebrating that. There's two ways you can look at it. Either he was lamenting it, which I think is kind of how it reads to me, or he was just stating a fact obvious for the sake of contrast.
Can we mention the fact that they started off by saying, if you know your history?
Well, that's the thing. If you know your history. Here's the thing. You don't even have to know the history. If you just take the recitation of events in the poem on the face value of it, context clues tells you that third verse is not a celebration of the death of slaves. Hell, the entire thing is not a celebration of anything. You know, the history behind why that poem became our national anthem is weird enough as it is. But if you read the thing, it's talking about the horrors of war. It's not celebrating the deaths of slaves. But anyway.
I do feel I should remind you, though, Scribe. We are talking about people who think that making fun of and joking and talking shit about Nazis is supporting them. So,
right. All right. Well, let's move on to something that's hopefully a little bit more funny than constantly just baiting us into... this one comes from Massive Dynamics. California man wearing red cape arrested after smoking meth, breaking into home, sheriff said. It doesn't look like a cape so much as a bathrobe.
Somebody had a day.
There's a picture on the tweet, and it's a bathrobe. It's not a cape. See, there you go. Is that a cape? It has sleeves. Capes don't have sleeves. I don't know if you know this.
It depends on what kind of hero you are.
Real heroes don't have sleeves. A California man wearing a red cape was arrested Monday night after smoking methamphetamine and breaking into a home, authorities said. Is that really that only separates this story from any other stories wearing a red bathrobe? Okay. Eric Wilden of Stockton broke into the home of a wheelchair-bound senior citizen just before 9 p.m. and began acting erratically, if you can believe it. The homeowner armed himself with a handgun and called 911. Well, good for him. Quote, and they said, can you describe him? Steve, the 72-year-old homeowner and retired fire captain, told Fox with a hint of laughter. Quote, yeah, pretty good-sized guy in a red cape. He described how the intruder appeared confused while speaking to him. Quote, I want a place to stay. I want to sleep in your house. Where is Lewis? Steve recalled the intruder saying. He also quoted Wilden as saying, quote, I work for the government. I used to kill people, unquote. While he was armed with a handgun, Steve told the station that he didn't want to use it. Instead, he said he kept the intruder focused on Lewis and convinced him to search outside. Now, good for him for at least trying to find and de-escalate the situation before it became worse than it had to be. Now, that's not to say that if things had gone sideways, he wasn't completely justified in shooting the guy, but good to go for another option if you have it. The sheriff's office said that after Wilden was persuaded to leave the home, responding deputies arrived and found him wearing what appeared to be a red cape and stealing items from the homeowner's detached garage. After being detained, Wilden admitted to smoking methamphetamine about 6 hours before the incident. Wilden was booked into the Amador County Sheriff's Office for jail for burglary and being under the influence of a controlled substance. Well, there you go. I was hoping that the red cape would come into more point into the story, but it really didn't.
It just made people interested, I guess.
Yeah, I think the better story is that the old man was able to talk this guy down into just being stupid outside. Moving on. See, I did a story from them. Okay. What? Okay, this one comes from Tall Person. Is this correct? Is this real life? This is from Post Millennial. Exclusive footage. Progressive King County Council candidate threatens to blow up school bus, calls children cowards as they flee. What? Is this the King County of Seattle, King County? Footage exclusively obtained by the Post Millennial shows progressive candidate for King County Council Ubax guard here? What? Is that a Star Wars villain? Threatening school children while claiming she may have a bomb or a gun and then calling them cowards as they flee from her. I'm sure that the X is silent or something. I don't care. I'm going to call her Ubax for being an idiot. Ubax guard here boarded the Highline School District bus on January 12th, 2010? Why are we only hearing about this now? Of course, I wasn't paying attention to anything back in 2010, so I guess I wouldn't have known it then. As it was about to begin its morning route to Chinook Middle School, guard here can be seen walking onto the school bus filled with children. She tells the bus driver not to drive because, quote, it's a matter of national security. She tells him, quote, the bus is not leaving. The driver then calls the police. When the driver asks her if something happened to one of the kids, she says, quote, if something happens, it's going to happen to you. Guard here then tells the school children she is wearing loose clothing and she might have a bomb or a gun. Quote, someone better get here real quick, unquote, the bus driver exclaims. A heroic officer arrives and arrests her. Finally, as seen from the back of the bus, children flee out of the back of the bus. Guard here can be heard calling them cowards over and over again. Deputy Prosecutor Gretchen Holmgren said students were afraid for their safety, and as students fled through the rear emergency exit of the bus, guard here began screaming that they were cowards. Holmgren wrote the court, quote, while speaking with the middle school students, the defendant stated that she might have a bomb and might have a gun when students attempted to escape. Yeah, you already went over this like 3 times. According to a detective with the King County, like, I don't know, sheriff's office or something, guard here told the arresting officer she was, quote, prepared to die. However, no weapons were found in her possession. She eventually pled the felony charges down to a gross misdemeanor before trial. This behavior has not dampened her popularity within the Democratic Party. Democrat State Senator Rebecca Saldana said in her endorsement of guard here, quote, I will follow UBACs anywhere, unquote.
How about into oblivion?
Yeah. How about onto a school bus? Would you do that? Former radical city, it is Seattle City Council member and activist Mike O'Brien called guard here, quote, an amazing leader, calling children cowards for running away from a bomb threat. It is unclear if Saldana or O'Brien were aware of guard here's bomb threats against children on a school bus when they gave their endorsements.
I'd wager they probably weren't.
I'm gonna guess no.
Yeah.
Guard Here's campaign has been boosted on social media by Rial Johnson and Prism Washington. Well, now there's a name. Both of which have a history of representing and promoting activist socialist candidates such as Socialist City Council member Tammy Morales, who advocated for riots during last summer's unrest. I think I might have seen that Zoom call. Morales, even after the original story regarding Guard Here, you spelled her name wrong, went viral, still endorsed the candidate, as did another local progressive, Varishna Khan of the Redmond City Council. UBACs. Man. Okay. Well, that's interesting. I'm just curious that it took, 11 years for anybody to pay attention to this? I guess. I don't know. You do background checks on candidates for public office.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. Let's see. This one comes from Lee Gardner. And it comes from Coco. Or KOCO, as the case may be. 31 rescued, including 14 children, in massive human trafficking operation in Kansas City, Independence, Wichita. Or three places, I guess. Okay. ICE said the youngest child was 4 years old. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement said a recent operation in Wichita, Independence, and Kansas City, Missouri resulted in the rescue of 31 victims of human trafficking, including 14 missing children for sexual exploitation. ICE said the youngest child was 4 years old and 17 were adults. According to ICE, the operation took place June 17th through 26th, and the enforcement operation resulted in the arrest of 82 individuals who will be charged with crimes related to soliciting prostitution, commercial sex trafficking, sodomy, narcotics violations, felony assault on a police officer, sex offender registry violations, and outstanding warrants. HSI Kansas City, along with HSI Wichita, the Wichita Police Department, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, Kansas Highway Patrol, Health and Human Services, United States Marshal Service, Platte County Sheriff's Office, Independence Police Department, Jackson County Sheriff's Department, Missouri State Highway Patrol, and Bourbon County Sheriff's Office, and the Hutchinson Police Department conducted the operation.
Good Lord.
And a partridge in a pear tree. The results of the operation were announced by Homeland Security Investigations Deputy Special Agent in Charge, Kansas City, James Wright. Okay, and then we go on to gas prices. Well, and now gas prices. Shush. Wow, okay. I'm glad that happened. I'm also horrified that was happening. But just so you know, there's no crisis at the border or nothing.
Well, obviously. I was doing my best to refrain from saying, looks like ICE is still separating kids from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because, that's all that is.
Okay. I'm going to end on this one because I originally saw this on a tweet that Foxy tagged me on. But this particular story comes from Signal Boost. And Foxy said this has the makings of a great horror movie. Radioactive wild boar-pig hybrid emerges in nuclear wasteland of Fukushima.
Fallout.
I know, right? Mike R asks the most relevant question about the last article. Scribe Light, was Gas Buddy mentioned in that article? Satsu, have you heard about Gas Buddy?
No, why don't you tell me extensively about Gas Buddy?
Why, Satsu, I'm glad you asked. Gas Buddy is an app that tells you all about the gas prices across the country.
Really?
You can find out what the price of gas is in Wichita at any time, just hitting the button on the app.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. It tracks gas prices, gas futures, the gas that your grandmother's currently experiencing, all types of gas.
That's amazing.
Gas Buddy, the app for all your gas needs. We are not sponsored by Gas Buddy, although we sure as heck should be. A hybrid species of wild boar and domestic pigs is marauding around Fukushima, Japanese scientists have discovered by surprise after investigating the effects of radiation on animals. Okay, so my first question is wild boars mating with domestic pigs an anomaly? A genetic study found that wild boar crossbred with domestic pigs escaped from local farms in areas deserted by humans after a tsunami and earthquake triggered the 2011 crisis at Fukushima nuclear power plant and displaced 160,000 people. For years, hunters have been tracking down radioactive boar, which number in their hundreds and registered levels of the radioactive element cesium-137, 300 times higher than is safe. Scientists at Fukushima University used genetic testing to track the impact of the radiation on wildlife in a regional DNA investigation. The study, published in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B, that should be the name of an anime. And I'm not even kidding. Proceedings of the Royal Society B. Should have absolutely nothing to do with science or something. There should just be something in some anime or manga somewhere called the Royal Society B, and this tells their tales.
Make it happen.
Yeah. Chat, go for it. I freely give you that idea. Found that there were no genetic mutations, but instead made the unexpected discovery that the boar had been mating with pigs. Okay, so again, is it entirely unheard of for boars to mate with pigs? And are they still domesticated if they're running around? I mean, if the whole place was abandoned, they're not really domesticated pigs anymore, are they? You know what I mean? The, quote, biological invasion, well, I guess that's one way to classify sex, started after wild boar from surrounding mountains gradually moved into depopulated towns, meeting domestic pigs, which ran wild, so not domesticated, after farmers were forced to flee the area. The exclusion zone, I'm getting some stalker vibes, was lifted in 2018, but officials have struggled to reclaim some areas from the boar, which have become unafraid of humans. The genetic sequences of 338 wild boar collected between 2006 and 2018 from across the region were analyzed, with scientists discovering that at least 18 boar displayed a so-called biological invasion of domestic pig genes. I still ask, okay, it's an interesting sort of, environmental habitat, worlds collide kind of thing, but are boars mating with pigs that odd? 18 boar phenotypically identified as wild boar had a European domestic pig haplotype, the report explained. Frequencies of this haplotype have remained stable since first detection in 2015. This result infers ongoing genetic pollution in wild boar populations from released domesticated pigs. Now, hey, that is just offensive to domesticated pigs. Like boars are being polluted with domesticated pig DNA. Come on. Why gotta be so mean? I know it is. Well, I mean, it's specious, actually. The study also found that more wild boar pig hybrids had since been discovered beyond the confines of the radiation-hit areas of Fukushima, with domestic pig genes apparently migrating into the general boar population. Quote, the present findings suggest a need for additional genetic monitoring to document the dispersal of domestic genes within wild boar stock, the report said. Let's see. There was a high okay. So I guess it's an interesting ecological event. I just, aside from the fact that you don't want radioactive pig meat getting onto your dinner plate, not quite sure what the big deal is. But anyway, everyone, we're going to move on from that. Thank you so much for all the stories. Sorry I didn't get to them all, but we have other stuff in the show to do, conceivably. So, Satsu, what have you been up to on the YouTubes?
Just editing, a little backlogged stuff. Nothing too crazy. I've been kind of getting the urge to stream again, but I've created a kind of unique scenario for myself here because, like I told you guys, I've been mining on my computer, just using. Because if you got a good video card in your computer and you're not using it to mine, I don't know why. Because it's just free money. But now that I've started doing it, though, like I'm just like, man, I want to do this other thing that requires my video card, and it's like, but if I do that, it'll stop my mine. So now I'm just like, I mean, fortunately, I can play Final Fantasy. No problem. Like it is not affected at all while I'm mining, which is kind of weird, but it doesn't have any problem running. Almost everything else is a completely different story. So it's just like, I could absolutely 100% sit here and make money all day, or I could do a stream and get 0 donations for several hours. I think I'm gonna mine. So it's one of those things, and I don't even have a game in mind that I specifically want to play. I don't know. I just kind of miss streaming. Yeah.
Why don't you stream how you mine?
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be fascinating.
I don't know. I mean, somebody might find it educational.
Nah.
So Data Wasteland wants to know, how much have you made mining Satsu? Well, I haven't made anything mining Satsu. Well, do you wish to reveal anything about your gotten gains?
I mean, it kind of just fluctuates. I think my computer alone, or my card, at least when I started, does like $6 a day.
Hey, that's a coffee and a donut.
Yeah, just sitting here, and then I got a rig set up at my friend's house or whatever that does anywhere from, I think, anywhere from $15 to $20 a day. So, I mean, it's nice. I mean, we kind of jumped on the train much later than everybody else, and the numbers fluctuate so much. It's really hard to keep track, but
hey,
it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and that's a day.
Oh yeah.
So let's say you get on the low end of the other computer, you get $10 a day out of it. $10 a day times 30 days. That's not that $300 a month. That ain't too shabby.
Yeah, low end is like $14 a day, and on a really good day, it could go up to like 23. So it's not terrible.
There you go. I mean, and it all adds up. And I mean, $300 a month. That's a decent chunk of your rent payment or utilities or whatever else. So.
Yeah, I ain't complaining at all, for sure.
All right. Well, as for myself, I had an exciting day of TEDx, Satsu, if you can believe it.
Yeah, you know what? I was cooking dinner earlier, and I pulled out my tablet or whatever because that's my new favorite thing to watch YouTube stuff on. And I saw that you had uploaded, and I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna watch this while I cook. And I'm like, you know what? I want to enjoy this experience, so maybe not.
So you didn't watch it?
No, I didn't watch it, even though I was like, I just didn't want to do it while I was cooking because I'm like, that's gonna fucking ruin my mood.
Well, man, you missed out.
Did I?
You missed out. Oh yeah, because we were told that there was a problem with masculinity.
Yeah.
We were told, and it was never explained. But we were told. I mean, we were told in very, very certain terms that these behaviors are toxic. Also, well, no, I don't want to give it all away because I'll say this, and those of you that watched it with me know, and I even explained it at length at one point. It was a very frustrating sit for about 75% of it. And I expressed myself in that way in several moments. However, ultimately, nothing of what he said in those first 75 percentiles of the presentation was all that new as far as argumentation or what people say when they're talking about toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
But holy shnikes, when you get to that last bit, it was like the last 2 minutes, the guy just hit it out of the park. I'm not going to tell you what happened, but he said a couple of things in quick succession there at the end.
Just rapid fire.
Oh, man. And you guys were there for it. And yeah, so anyway. Also, just for informative purposes, the bingo cards have been updated. As I've talked about previously and as has been discussed on previous episodes, I have consolidated the diversity and inclusion square with the equity square into the diversity, equity, and inclusion square, since they're all basically put together into one clump these days anyway. And I have filled in the open square with sales pitch for product or service. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes TEDx and or TED Talks are used as basically just a sales pitch platform for the speaker's own organization or product or app or service or whatever. So it'll be the square is basically on probation in the sense that we will give it some time until we run into a situation where we have a possible example, because it could be a little subjective. It's not just someone brings up the job that they work at. Like, as a school teacher, that's not promoting their services or product. It has to be something where they promote their own business and or product with which they're involved in, even if it's not a direct sales thing, but they tie in what their company does to the thing, then you're edging into a sales pitch. So like I say, and again, it can be subjective. I can already foresee there might be some problems, but having a little subjectivity in the squares is always beneficial for discussions and argumentation. And yes, Jim Heelis was the one that put the suggestion onto the Twitters. I had already thought about sales pitch as one of the options, but the more I thought about it, I was like, how many times have we had somebody standing on a stage going like, I want to talk to you about feminism. My organization, Women for Zippers in the Back of Hiking Pants, that kind of thing. So, and I didn't make that up. There was a TEDx where they were complaining about how outdoor gear for women was sexist because there was nothing for women to do when they had to go pee in the woods, unlike men who have zippers in the front. And I as this thing went on, and they spent like 3/4 of the thing complaining about women's clothing for outdoorsing and everything. And within the first 5 minutes, I was like, so what is this? You're going to talk about having a zipper in the back of your pants? And lo and behold, when they finally got around to promoting their product, it was a pair of pants with a zipper in the back. Not explaining how you get around underwear with a zipper in the back of your pants, unless you're also selling underwear that has a flap. But hey, who thinks ahead, I guess? Anyway.
That's one thing I've always wondered. A big complaint from women has always been like, female pants, they got those fake pockets, they don't actually have pockets and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, how is it possible that all these women are complaining about this and not one savvy female entrepreneur was like, like how has that not happened yet?
Or, I mean, the more simple solution, obviously, is if you're a woman and you have a pair of pants that has fake pockets in it, well, get out the sewing machine and put your own pockets on.
Whoa.
Oh, whoops.
Whoa.
Did I say that out loud?
That was some next level. That was some monkey level sexism, dude. What the fuck? Holy shit, dude.
Well, hell, no, I mean, even for myself, I mean, if I have before I go out and buy something, like I have a pair of pants. I love this pair of pants, but it's got this hole in one of the pockets that keeps like reopening. And rather than go out and buy a new pair of pants, I just take them out, pull out the pocket, backwards or whatever, and I sew it up. And even though my sewing job is only going to be temporary because I suck at sewing, rather than going out and buying a new pair of pants or paying somebody to do it, I just do it myself. There's a problem. Can I solve it myself before I ask somebody else to do it? Yeah. And so I do that. What's wrong with that? I don't have a sewing machine, which all women do, obviously. Anyway, as far as fucketry goes, I do have something that I'd like to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me find it here. Yeah. How about this?
Putting the fangs back in feminism.
The fangs back in feminism, Satsu.
What?
Is a very urgent project. As it exists right now, I would say feminism is for white women and girls.
Oh, Satsu.
What
Feminism is for white women and girls, Satsu.
What is happening right now?
You see white feminism in the movies, in the newspaper, in the capitalist system, in the wars that may affect your region.
Only white women are involved in feminism, Satsu.
Huh.
And it's in the conversations that you are invited to be a part of and the conversations that you are excluded from.
Oh. Okay, so Angela Davis, Oprah Winfrey, Beyonce, Kimberly Crenshaw, Rosa Parks, on and on. And you're right. None of those people exist. Remember, none of those people exist, guys.
My experience with white feminism.
Uh-huh. Author of Against White Feminism. Now, here's somebody who's got a product to sell. Now, just as a note, I'm not going to go through this whole video. I just figured I'd round out the end of the hour with it, or the end of the half hour, just because why not? Just because why not?
This lady looks like a pleasant experience.
Has been that I always have to file my edges, explain my stories. I feel that
God forbid you have to explain yourself.
Dude, the implication behind that, it's like every white person or every other white woman walks up to another white woman and immediately they resonate and automatically download each other's experiences because they're both white. And they're like, okay, I now know everything you've ever been through, fellow white person. They don't ever have to elaborate or share their fucking stories or talk about. No, just white people. As soon as they meet together, it's like two Samsung phones. Yeah. You could just fuck it.
Yeah, because as we know, Joe Biden and Donald Trump are in the same wavelength because they're both white. That's how that works.
If I talk about the fact that I was a single mother.
A single mother? That never happens.
Well, we know only minority people are single mothers, right?
I guess.
That I had a divorce.
Only minority people have divorces.
Oh, well, I mean, gosh, at least the child was not raised in sin initially, right? Or what is that? So you're a single mother who was divorced. And?
The fact that I lived in a shelter.
You lived in a shelter and were a single mother and divorced? You know what? None of those things are exclusive to Satsu?
Well, I would have normally said minority people, but now I'm starting to question that notion.
A ton of things are automatically assumed.
Oh, automatically assumed. Okay, what do I automatically assume about someone who is a single mother, divorced, and in a shelter?
Mm-hmm.
That they are a single mother who's divorced and in a shelter. Because automatically I couldn't possibly know what led to the divorce, what led to you being in a shelter. I'd have to ask. But if you're assuming to think that I assume to think something about you, I think that's a you thing.
I love that too. It's like I automatically assume whenever I meet someone that they automatically assume things about me.
Yeah.
Just
yeah. You know,
you're an idiot.
And if she's going to complain about what people automatically assume about you based on relatively arbitrary characteristics, Oh, boy, have I got news for you about critical race theory.
About me. Structurally, we make it impossible for that Black or brown or Asian woman to make any real changes.
Really?
Do tell. Okay. That's the setup. That's the wind up. Give me your pitch.
Impossible is a pretty strong word, I would say.
It is a strong word. So yeah, but anyway, so she that was the wind up. So give me your pitch.
Feminist context. We have to make feminism political.
You're going to say again, aren't you? You're going to add the word again to that statement, aren't you?
Again.
Yeah. Okay. I would like our speaker to explain to us, and I know that she won't. When was feminism not political? Because every major issue that has anything to do with the advancement of women's rights invariably end up being a political issue because you're dealing with laws and policies and so on. I mean, actual feminism, not the sort of third wave air conditioners or sexist things. I'm talking about like second wave, legitimate level feminism of, no discrimination on the basis of gender, for equal opportunity, stuff like that. That kind of stuff. Okay. Because what was feminism originally pushing for? Equal rights for women. Inherently political. Now, if you're going to say that third wave feminism and its major tenets these days are all a bunch of nonsense that don't actually equate to politics, I might be on board with you. But it still seeds into politics, because tell me again about the gender wage gap or the pink tax.
Oh, that pink tax.
58% of all women living in poverty are women of color.
58% of all women living in poverty are women of color. So on the entire planet. So when you're talking about some of the poorest places on the planet, like, I don't know, India or Ethiopia and other places like that. Well, I could believe you. Does that have to do with racism, or does that have to do with population demographics nation to nation?
Well, okay. Let's just say we're looking at a pie graph and we have women of color and white people, right?
Well, we do.
Well, I'm just saying.
Right there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Women of color and white people. Mm-hmm. What they don't show is that women of color portion is like 90 other different colors that are broken into much smaller pieces. And that one big portion is white people.
Satsu.
I'm just saying.
Are women of color. The world that Black and brown women inhabit is a completely different world from the world that white women inhabit.
Yeah?
Really?
How do y'all communicate?
How are there poor white women then? I mean, if they're poor, it's kind of, I mean, economic status at the bottom end is kind of the great equalizer. Very few things matter besides just making it through the next day. But okay, a different world than white women. Is that true between, say, America versus, I don't know, South Africa? Or America versus Russia? Or America versus China? Is it really the same thing? And since America is kind of a melting pot compared to a lot of those other countries? If you say so, I guess. Anyway, I don't want to go any further into this because I think that's enough. I was just curious because I saw this video from AJ Plus talking about, white feminism is bad or whatever. I was like, okay. Well, then I guess you're going to have to racially segregate your feminist agendas, which turns you into a whole different kind of organization.
The struggle.
Anyway, we're going to move on, guys, to question time. If you have questions, comments, concerns, complaints, conspiracy theories, put them in the chat now. If you have questions for us directly, please put plenty of chat marks please put plenty of chat marks after those. If you have statements for us to consider, please put plenty of statement marks after those. And I'll just fumble over my words as I look over into the chat. And who do I see but a Sinatra? Are they even going to talk about the fact that white people are a minority worldwide? Well, that's the other thing too. It's like 58% of all poor women in the world are women of color. When, proportionally speaking, globally, white people are a minority in the first place. It's sort of like putting women, when they say like minorities and women, except that women are the majority gender in the world, right? So yeah, playing with reality and facts. And like Satsu said, women of color is kind of a broad category as compared to white women.
Yeah.
It's interesting she didn't say like 58% are black women or Asian women or whatever else you said earlier. No, she just groups them all together and says it's everybody against. Yeah. So anyway, let's see. We have a little. Send me the Scribe. Oh, okay. You want the? I will find you a link to this right now, Sinatra, because yes, I think you'd like it. So it's AJ Plus, just as a reference. I will find you the link in a moment. Satsu, can you field a question or two while I do this?
Let's see here. I'm gonna pull from where I'm looking. So,
well, that usually is how that works. If you were pulling from places you weren't looking, I'd be very impressed.
You know what? I'm not doing it now.
Oh, for gosh sakes, Satsu, can't you take a little ribbing?
No.
Well, obviously not.
Feminists complain about TERFs, yet the same feminists openly exclude white women. I mean, look, exclusion is a tool that's only used by people who benefit the most from it, I guess. It's so, like I said, dude, it's so hilarious because the most exclusionary people I know are people who fight for inclusion. The most racist people I know are anti-racists. It's weird.
Sinatra, I tweeted you the link to the video. Pirates Creed, you watch Razor Fist video on Cosby. I haven't yet. I didn't know that he posted it. I'll probably end up watching it soon because honestly, so much time has passed. I don't remember all the details, and I don't know that we paid attention to all the details at the time. So I know we read stories about it and everything, but I know it affected a lot of, like my sister's, or at least, on occasionally she's a stand-up comedian, and I know that it affected a lot of people in her little realm of the world because up to that point, Bill Cosby really was a hero to a lot of comedians. He propped up a lot of comedians in their early years and everything else, and his success and his stature in the industry and everything else, it was a really big letdown to a lot of people when he was charged and convicted and everything. And again, I knew the truth of it ultimately, inherently, but all the same, it was kind of shocking. Let's see. Spudgun Scribe, how did you and Satsu get into streaming, or how did you decide to start? I decided to start streaming because I wanted to do something different on my channel at the time. And my first streams were kind of, it was like bringing people on, just talking about some subject or something. I honestly am blanking right now. I had a name for it and everything. But yeah, I was just playing out with Hangouts and I was trying to see if I could make it work because you had to, back in the olden days, you had to reach a certain threshold of subscribers or watch time or something to be able to start doing live streams. And so as soon as I qualified, I tried it out. I learned how to use Hangouts, and then Monkey asked me, how do you do this? And I taught him, and then, all that started with the whole Monkey streams leading into Lords of the Night. So, yeah, that's how I initially started doing streaming. And at the time, I did it very rarely, like once in a blue moon kind of thing, until started taking over a night or two here or there for Lords of the Night. So that's why. Streaming specifically. YouTube is a whole other story, but that's something else. Satsu, why did you start streaming?
Kind of the same reason. Like I had my channel and stuff going for a while beforehand or whatever, and talking to myself, you eventually got to the point to where you're like, there are people watching these videos, obviously, but at the end of the day, it's just you yelling into a mic in the room by yourself. So once I started watching other people's streams and stuff, I'm just like, I would find myself yelling out responses to things on streams that I'm not on. So I'm just like, maybe I should get in on one of these fucking streams. I got some shit to say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my very first stream actually was before I actually had a YouTube channel. It was I randomly came across at the time an unknown person to me on YouTube, Irate Bear on Minds.com. He posted a thing. I swear, if I hadn't just been on Minds at that moment on that part of the day, and I saw his little thing saying, "Hey, I'm about to stream. Anybody want to come on?" I was just like, "Sure, why not?" And that was my first live stream, and that eventually led to my starting my YouTube channel. So it's really Irate Bear's
Minds, dude.
I know. I still have an account. I logged into it like 2 or 3 months ago after years of not looking at it, and people are still subscribing to my feed, and I literally done nothing with it for years, but you know, whatever. Check your logic. Spudgun, who was ranting who started Lords of the Night. Excusez-moi. Excusez-moi. It was Monkey and I, and technically, Monkey wouldn't have been streaming if I hadn't been teaching him that first night to begin with. So it was that. I'll be generous. It was both of us that started the whole Monkey streams into Lords of the Night when we finally gave it a name.
Yeah, both of you guys were responsible for starting it. Technically, all three of us were responsible for conceptualizing it, but somebody was absent when it all came together.
Yeah, and who was that and why? Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, that time of the month. Anyway, JB, approximately when did you guys believe all this anti-white stuff started? I mean, well, anti-white stuff, I mean, some people just don't like Oreo cookies, okay? I mean, the stuff in the... No, okay. I mean, it's been around in one way, shape, or form for a long time. And so, you know, and at a certain point in history, it was justified to a certain extent. Because legally speaking, white people had rights that other people did not. And so fighting against those laws was effectively fighting against the privileges possessed in law by white people. Not necessarily fueled by a hatred of the skin color, but it was there and it was hard to sort of separate. As things went on, and you had like the Black Panthers and heck, even like the Weathermen, even though most of them were just white college kids, white people representing the establishment and coming to symbolize all the bad things, and then people carrying the hatred for the status quo over into associating that exclusively with people with white skin. That's been around for forever. It's become acceptable and cool in the last several years. Why that is, or what was the trigger point for that to become mainstream as like acceptable racism, I'm probably not the academic to answer that question, but Satsu, what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's been relatively recent since just kind of the fuck white people mandate had become acceptably mainstream. Like it's been within the past maybe 6 to 8 years, somewhere around there, where it's just like it is literally okay and actually encouraged in a lot of circles to be like, yeah, you know what, fuck white people, and people are like, yeah. You know,
if I was really cynical, and I don't think I'd be alone in saying this, if I was really cynical, the election of Barack Obama and the idea that the country was moving past an inherent bias against people who weren't white in positions of power and so on, that might have thrown a bit of fuel on the fire of people who thrive or benefit from stoking that kind of division. And, you know, framing it as to oppose someone saying that white people are bad is to be promoting white supremacy. I think that line was probably the biggest driver. And I mean, if you wanted sort of a similar example, you go back to in Britain in the Rotherham case. If you don't know about the Rotherham case, and I'm not doing it justice in my summary here, really do look it up. There's plenty of people who have done it better. The very short version is the police in the city Rotherham knew that there were grooming and rape gangs in their city. But because the majority of the gangs in question were from the Middle East, and thus minorities, the cops, not wanting to be accused of racism or racial profiling, basically looked the other way as little girls were being victimized and raped and tortured for years, all under the fear of being called racist for enforcing the law on minority populations. And not just minority populations, but just criminals. And so that fear of being associated with something, and again, we've seen it, we talked about it before, the Twitter mob or the loud minority of activists ending up destroying someone's life over the accusation of doing something based on a racial motive is motivation enough for people to look the other way or to join in on the chant rather than have their entire lives destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think the main driver is that you have people who legitimately aren't racist, but are also fearful of being called racist if they happen to do anything that someone decides is racist. And anyway, it's like I say, I'm not the best academic. I'm not an academic at all on the subject, but that's sort of my surface impression. Frosted asks, horror movies you'd have the best and worst chances of surviving. The best and worst chances of surviving. Let's see. Best chance of surviving, probably It Follows. You ever see that movie?
Why does that ring a bell?
Yeah, so it's this, and I'm going to screw it up, but basically there's like this invisible ghost monster force that's following you that gets passed on due to sex. Like you have sex with somebody. It's sort of like a supernatural venereal disease is kind of how the thing works. And part of the issue is that it's invisible to everybody except you, but it's also solid, and that can affect the world around you. And of course, everybody thinks you're crazy because they can't see it, and only you can. You just have to throw a bucket of paint on it, and people would know it's there.
Basically.
Yeah, just like, I mean, watching that movie, I was just kind of like, I mean, and maybe there's some rule not presented in the movie that would say otherwise about how this thing works. But if you wanted to show that there's this being that's attacking you and you can't see it kind of thing, it's like the Invisible Man thing. You just throw paint on it.
Yeah.
And these people would believe you then and be able to fight back against it. But anyway, as far as the one that you couldn't survive, golly. There was one. I'm trying to think of what it was. It was something like a disease or something. Oh, well, I mean, it's a movie where you have to be ridiculously stupid in the first place to get into a position where you have no chance of survival. So really the chance of survival is increased by the fact of don't be stupid. But it's this movie called The Ruins. And these, stupid teenagers or whatever, 20-somethings, they go off into the jungle in, like, I forget where it was, like Mexico or the Central America somewhere. And they find this old Mayan temple that's just covered in all these vines and things. And they go up to this temple and they start walking up it. And then the locals come out and go like, oh, no. And they start like shooting at them and trying to make them stop. And they all run towards the temple and they're all like, oh, freaking out. Because there's the vines and the plants on the temple are all like man-eating and they infect everything and etc. Once you get into that situation, as far as the rules of the plants and everything are concerned, you're pretty much screwed. Like you're dead. There's just no way around it. If you get the spores on your skin or you inhale them, they're going to be growing inside your body and you're dead. So granted that you are dumb enough to not pay attention to all the warning signs that you're approaching something that people don't want you to go to, yeah, that'd be a tough one to survive given how they set it up in the movie. I mean, there's a way to cure it real quick, and that is just napalm. But of course, you would die in the process because there's no way you're going to get away from it. So yeah. You got any horror movie escapes or no escapes, Satsu?
If we're talking about me personally, any one of those horror movies that results in people going somewhere they don't belong, and then the horror movie starting because you're here now, yeah, I would definitely survive those because I'd be the motherfucker like, no, I'm not going to this remote place where nothing works and nobody can find us. Like, no, I'll see you guys on the news tomorrow. Like, I won't be doing that. Sorry.
Sorry.
As far as any movie that I would have the worst chance of surviving in, anything that requires me to have a lot of endurance to get away from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I probably, if it requires me to run away from said thing for a prolonged amount of time, I'm probably gonna die. Because
the movie I always wanted to see, and I'm sure this has been done somewhere, and I know it kind of was done in the Blair Witch first sequel, Book of Shadows, but the movie I always want to see was the movie starts where the horror movie usually ends, where like the house implodes and the girl and the guy escape by the skin of their teeth. And, you know, they were attacked by ghosts and all their friends are dead, right? Because you almost never see like, okay, well, what happens after that? I mean, those kids' parents are going to want to know what happened to their kids. And when you got these two surviving teenagers saying the ghosts got them while they're standing there covered in blood, like, I don't think that's going to fly. So I always wanted to see like a movie that was playing it completely straight as an addendum to a generic horror movie and just go through the drama of knowing a thing that happened, but having no way to prove it to anybody and just see what kind I don't know how you can make it more interesting than that, but I always thought that would be a funny sort of riff off of like your average sort of like slasher flick. What happens then? And you sometimes see that in horror movies, like, you know, Nightmare on Elm Street, where the kids are trying to tell the parents, no, really, a guy is coming to me in my dreams and trying to kill me. And they're like, yeah, whatever. That kind of thing. I really want to see like the aftermath of the full horror movie. What happens then? Let's see. So let me move on from that. JB says it really seemed to start with Trump, in my opinion. It was definitely magnified by Trump. But remember, Black Lives Matter and all that stuff started under Obama. With incidents that occurred under Obama. And I'm not going to say that it started with Black Lives Matter, but certainly the modern push of that ideology had gasoline poured on it with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything after that, and then Ferguson and so on, with this this machinery ready to pounce on any incident dealing with police, white police, and a black person coming into conflict and turning it into a national dialogue.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who seem to believe that it started with Trump, in a lot of cases, I find that they just really started paying attention around that point. You know, so like from their perspective, where it's like, you know, they kind of perked up at around that time, and it's like, oh, well, you know, so it'll seem like, yeah, this thing it's gotten really bad all of a sudden, where it's like, no, it's been that way. You just
well, also, I mean, unlike Obama, Trump could actually embody in the highest position of power all of the things that represent the worst in from their perspective of the white power structure. And, you know, and how they took his comments on what happened in Charlottesville and kept twisting them around with something he didn't say to keep propping that up. So yeah, it was a lot easier sell about the whole system of white supremacy once Obama was out of office. Let's see. Ebony Williams, favorite flavor of popcorn. When I was in elementary school, they'd sell popcorn like once a month or something, that popcorn day or whatever it was. And I forget what the brand was, but they have these little bags of popcorn. And I always liked the cheddar cheese ones with the cheddar powder on it and everything. I always liked that a lot. I always thought that was yummy. I can never really find that again in that same flavor, but I kind of like that. Otherwise, just like classic popcorn that's got, you know, little butter, not overwhelmingly so, and a little hint of salt, but not like you've dumped gobs of butter juice all over it or something. That's, yeah, somewhere in between there.
Yeah, I used to like the, and it was like the off-brand too, like the popcorn with the clear bag. It's got all the cheddar on it and stuff. My favorite popcorn right now to eat, it's not like something you can buy, like it comes the way I like it, but I like buying. You ever see the Hidden Valley ranch powder?
No. Oh, does Monkey know about this?
Oh yeah, it's a powder you can get,
Oh.
Hidden Valley Ranch, and
Yeah.
you can use it to make your own ranch at home. You can put it on like salads and different types of shit or whatever. I love that shit on popcorn. Oh my, like it is the best way to eat popcorn. If I have popcorn at home, I don't even want to eat it unless I have that on hand. So
JB, do you guys think this entire feminist nonsense will peter out at some point? No, because there's too much money in it.
no, none of the major kind of front-running activist movements are going anywhere as long as they're profitable.
Yeah, as long as there's money to be made, or foundations to be established, or nonprofits to be donated to. And don't get me wrong, I want to say something. It's not to say that the movements that some of these things are based on are themselves inherently bad. Okay, like I say, second wave feminism, sexual revolution, fighting for equal rights, etc., actual equal rights, equal opportunity. You're never going to find me arguing against that notion. It's how that notion is then leveraged into things that are either don't actually contribute to anything, or just use cynicism and conspiracy to raise money. And that is unfortunately what a lot of the current, most popular activist groups and organizations are doing these days. Because I've asked this question before, the Black Lives Matter, as an example, started, I think, technically in 2012. I think it was with the Trayvon Martin shooting that whole thing started as a hashtag anyway. Anyway, 2012 to now, almost 10 years. And my question has always been, all right, in the course of almost a decade, how has Black Lives Matter improved race relations? I mean, if that was the goal, to highlight the inequalities between the races and so on and so forth, all right, how has it improved race relations? With a decade worth of time and effort and everything else. And third wave feminism. Okay, what rights did women not have before, say, 2014 that they now do because of third wave feminism? That's really the question you have to ask when a lot of these organizations and movements and everything. It's like, depending on how long they've been around, what are their accomplishments? What can they point to as, this was wrong, objectively wrong before we started, and we've made that right? Anyway.
Well, right now, unfortunately, the legitimate answer to that, and it would be accepted in a lot of activist circles nowadays, is we started a conversation.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and that's enough for people.
Yeah,
apparently.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you want to talk about the lowest of bars to jump. Travis Gardner, Lords, have you ever been so stupefied by someone that your brain just breaks? Travis, have you watched Ted Excellence? I mean, I can't speak for Satsu, but I think I have reams of recorded evidence of that occurring for me. Satsu, how about you?
Almost every day. So it is a common occurrence now in my life.
Let's see. Sean Lee, Scribe, what is your favorite Tom Clancy book? Without Remorse. Comes in just above The Cardinal of the Kremlin. Without Remorse, the book, not whatever Amazon nonsense they've just produced and released in the last month or two, which was just a vehicle for Michael B. Jordan and had nothing to do with the story. I mean, just watching the trailer, I was like, you guys got it all wrong. Without Remorse is basically The Punisher, the novel, without it being The Punisher. It's great. It's great. It would make a great dramatic action movie revenge story. It really would. What they cooked up for the Amazon Prime version or whatever, it's so generic, and they compromise so much about the story. In this TV, I'm going to call it a TV movie because it's Amazon and everything. The character of John Clark gets involved in everything because Russian assassins kill his wife, and then they get into a whole like international whatever. In the book, John Clark's wife is already dead from a car accident. He's been widowed. And now he's a lonely guy, and he lives by himself. He's a military veteran. And then he meets a lady, and he falls in love with this lady. But then something horrible happens to this lady when her checkered past catches up with her. And as a result of this, John Clark goes on a one-man street-level war. Not an international terrorism, whatever. I mean, there are international elements to the story, right? But it is not this ridiculous... Anyway, great book. Now, admittedly, I have not seen the movie. Maybe for what it is, it's fine. I don't know. But when you have a love for source material and you see how it's been compromised for the sake of whatever and turned into something that it definitely wasn't in the beginning, a little irritating. So yeah, Without Remorse, and then after that, Cardinal of the Kremlin. Ebony Williams, Pennyman. Have you seen the Demon Slayer movie yet?
No, but mainly it's because I'm not sure where I can watch it. So if anybody has a link or something like that, if you know where you watched it and seen it, because I definitely want to see it. I just I'm not really sure where to go to see it. That won't give my computer AIDS.
Aha. Well then, with that, everyone, we're going to wrap up as we're at the top of the hour, and that's the end of the show. Sorry I didn't get to all your questions. You have so many. Really do appreciate you guys and your participation in the show. You guys are half the show between the articles you submit, questions you ask, and I really do appreciate you. Satsu, where can people find you next?
On my channel tomorrow on Lords of the Night.
Oh, there you go. All right. Yeah, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. As for myself, well, you'll find me also on Satsu's channel tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for Lords of the Night. The Sunday, I honestly, with all the billing stuff and things going on this week, I have not given any thought to what I might do on Sunday. So it might just be a surprise to you as it is to me. But I will think about that between now and then. Satsu, just as a programming note, I don't know what your family plans are for the 4th of July. Are we streaming on the 4th of July?
What day is that?
That's Monday. Well, no, sorry, the holiday. Oh, wait, no. The 4th of July, sorry. 4th of July is on Sunday, but Monday is the federally observed day for the day off. And so I guess my better question is, did you and Squishy and or your family have plans that would run over into Monday?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Because the holiday weekend goes until Monday, and I guess that's kind of what I meant.
Okay, yeah, I was definitely going to be, barbecuing and stuff on Sunday, but I don't think that was going to really.
Okay, so as far as we know, guys, we're going to be broadcasting on Monday. I know it's not the end of the week yet, but just as a programming note. Anyway, all that being said, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. You guys really are the best audience in the whole wide world. Wide world of sports, the wide world of sports. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. And knockwood, we weren't raided by any spammers. Unlike Monkey. Everyone who donated, thank you so much for your generosity. Really do appreciate it. Satsu, thank you for joining me as always.
Yup.
Everyone, your lives make us sad, and we will see you tomorrow.
Bye, guys.
And taking out my copy of Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns, the romance and sexual sorcery of sadomasochism.
Sadomasochism.
And today's secret word is bullwhips.
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 Yeah.
You gotta whip it. Whip it good. Do, 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 do.